Welcome to the Uber Mention podcast. Our mission is to provide content which fosters the expanding human consciousness in order to make us our individual and collective best selves. If you appreciate our show, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And please leave a comment below. Without further ado, I give you the Uber Mention. Welcome to the Uber Mention podcast. I am your co-host, Just Jeremy, and joining us is Clayton Albrecht, our rock and roll co-host for the evening. That's right. Jake is, I don't know, Jake's out and about somewhere around.
He's a busy one.
He's a busy one. He's hard to keep.
He's a traveler.
Reeled in, that guy. So tonight, Clayton and I are going to continue to build on what we talked about with the Duality podcast. And that's such a big topic, and it plays into so many different areas that, we're just going to kind of keep rapping in that direction and see what shakes out. But there's been some themes that are rising up in our lives that I think, a lot of people are going to be able to identify with. And it's this tension, right? It's like somebody's stretching a rubber band further and further. And we've gotten about as far to the edge of that stretch as we can. And it's either going to snap. Well, yeah, I hope.
We hope.
Right. It's either going to snap or it's going to be let go. And either way you look at it, there's going to be a massive amount of space that's going to be filled very quickly because nature abhors a vacuum. So, there will be no empty space. There can't be. It's going to be filled with something. And I think that's, when we talked about duality, there's dark forces and there's light forces, and then there's pretty much everything in between. And what makes up the dark forces, man, we could get way out into the weeds on that topic. And, the same with the light forces. I more and more, where I'm at is I'm not going down the dogma place. I'm not going to lay it at the feet of demonic entities any more than I'm going to lay anything at the feet of angelic entities. But I definitely, can't dispute that there is evil in the world, however we want to define that, and that there is loving, the opposite end of that. And I would say that it's pretty clear the dark forces in this case are pretty much pure evil. Everything they do is inverting or distorting upside down, though, specifically inverting or distorting creation. And when I say creation, I'm not saying that from the Christian perspective. I'm saying it from God being the all. Like, God, to me, is all there is. We talked about this in the previous episode. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So, that's just operating from that headspace that, to me, there is no separation. There is only the all. It's man who sees the separation and, iterates accordingly our experience. So, but we didn't really get off into what we think this devil entity could be. And I do want to spend a little time on that. I do. And the reason I want to do that is because, it's nobody knows anything. We're all kind of giving our best guesstimate of what it is. And, short of the people who have gone to some other realm and come back, which are few and far between, it's difficult to know for sure. So my take, anyway, on what this devil or all of the various incarnations that, people seem to put together is definitely it's something that we have all put so much thought energy into, that we have given rise to something, to another entity. Could it be alien? Could it be interdimensional? Could it be I guess I don't know. I don't seek to label what its species is. I just don't believe that it's human. And I also don't believe that it has the power to co-create anything. It only has power in deception and maintaining a low level vibration, right? And so if I were this thing called the devil, I would definitely be seeking to become physically real. And I do believe that that's, that's a possibility. I don't know, again, I don't want to get way too out in the weeds on this, but I think that in my own understanding, thoughts create power, but not just, every thought that you've ever had didn't come into manifestation, right? And that's, I know for me, I think of all kinds of things. I think of 27 different ways to solve one problem. So did all 27 of those ways manifest because I thought of them? No. It's what we put our action towards. That's the other part of the whole, the secret and the law of attraction, if you will, and all this manifesting stuff is we must take radical action in order to see it through. We just don't ever, for me, when I've manifested, like clearly manifested something, it never happens the way that I anticipated. So there's that. And the more I've opened myself to how it can manifest, well, the more the more of it I perceive in my experience. So I think that that's what this devil thing could be, right? Is the manifestation of so many generations of collective attention being focused towards this opposer of God. But he doesn't really oppose God. He's just, or she or it or whatever it is, it is just like the inverter of things, that which turns everything upside down. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, boy, actually one night, if you recall, we were in the kitchen together, all of our family, and it unraveled itself within me. I think for that first time in my life, I was able to articulate from beginning to end a linear thought of what I thought that force that we call the devil, loosely, very loose descriptor is. Again, I know by saying devil, it's either triggering for people who are very adverse to any religion or mysticism or Christianity, or they feel like mentioning oh my gosh, and here we are, these guys are caught up in the hoopla too of the must defeat the forces of evil,
right?
Satan thing. Well, in a way, yes, but I'm going to allow myself to speak freely and just kind of try to unravel this thing once again. So to me, it seems that we are made up of a multitude of energies, right? And I believe very much in the energetic centers that are pointed to as like the 7 chakras, or chakra, whatever, these overlying, more encompassing energy centers, and all of these roots branching out from them, However, to simplify it, 7 different centers, let's say, 7 different planetary forces, there's 7 repeats itself many times, but regardless, that we are made up, we can say, let's just entertain the idea that we're made up of a bunch of multitude of energies, like contained in this one thing that we call a being, a man with a capital M, regardless of gender, a human being. I fancy the word man more because if we want to get into etymology, human can mean sub-man, man.
That's right.
So man is made up of a bunch of multitude of energies that I feel are always want to seek authority and seek expression and rush the throne, so to speak. And it is up to us to balance them in the ways that we can and enact on the ones that feel appropriate for a given situation. We have 3 below our heart is kind of where they all meet, but in our heart is where they all meet. But the 3 below the heart we call the lower chakras, and words are tricky, y'all. Again, I'm going to say that probably a million times how words are tricky. Spells, again, right? Words are worlds and whirls. So we write in cursive. We spell in cursive or curses or whirls, and it's a little more linear in right brain nowadays, at least in the way we write here in America, So, but getting back to, we have 3 lower chakras. The heart, again, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is in our hearts. And then we have the 3 upper chakras. And when we hear those words upper and lower, we think of a hierarchy as in better than or less than, or good versus not good. It's tricky shit, y'all. But regardless, so going back to, we have a multitude of different energies, energy centers, each flowing for expression or dominance, perhaps over the rest, where it is maybe man's job and purpose to govern all of his inner sanctums and faculties, and again, act on the ones that are appropriate at that time. It's been described to me through mysticism and other things that I have read that the lower chakra, say the root chakra, our bottommost chakra, is governed by the planet Saturn, as well as gravity. Let's look at the word Saturn and look how close it is to the word Satan, right? And the lower chakra, the root chakra, has more, it has in a positive aspects to do with grounding, power, which can be good or bad, and overall physicality, I would say. And I would say that Satan, or Ahriman, or Lucifer, they're really, if you really go deep enough into esoterics, there are 3 different godheads that make up this similar idea. And if we think of things, when I think of the beast, I picture physicality, right? Like all out physicality and gravity. Again, you mentioned inversion, the symbol for sin was a downward triangle, where the symbol for ascension was an upward triangle. If you put the 2 of them together, you have the Star of David, and the center of that is God, let's say, right? Maybe the center of that here in the heart, So perhaps these downward, inward, down-pointing forces that seek expression take dominance over us in this world of physicality and materialism. I mean, it's not that hard to look around to say, are we more of a spiritual culture? Or are we more of a physical, material culture? Like which one is prevailing right now, so to speak? Well, it seems very much that the world of materialism and the world of physicality is the norm, and that's what we're presented with, and taught to observe the world through those senses, through physical senses, to fact check everything based upon physicality, and rounding off at best and at worst, leaving out and dismissing entirely our higher, more ethereal, perhaps intangible qualities, So perhaps it is, again, this lower aspect of ourselves that has tried to seek expression through us, and maybe it is represented by certain planetary forces like Saturn. Like, I don't condemn any planets for what they're doing. Like Mercury's in retrograde right now, which should be noted too. We'll get back to that with the tension that we're feeling. But I don't view Mercury as like an adversarial or like a bad thing. Actually, it could be looked at as an adversarial force in the same way that devil, or more specifically Satan, in Latin, I believe, means adversary. An adversary can also be a teacher. If you want to take the route of Lao Tzu, know thy enemy, like you know thyself. My enemy is my friend. There's a lot to be learned from that. But nevertheless, let's say this adversary has been employing for supremacy above the rest of the systems, and maybe has duped humanity. It has been its ploy all along to, as you put it, to oppose God, what we associate God with, this higher sense of self. Again, they're just different parts of the spectrum, trying to get away from the duality of it all. But as far as physical expression, I'm with you. Like, I don't know. There seems to be evidences, certainly more and more, if people look enough into ancient civilizations and their accounts of different aliens or deities or godheads or what have you, of things that seem, as you put it, pretty evil, pretty adversarial. And thought is definitely a very powerful thing. I believe the heart of it, the point of this all, is we are manifesting beings. I believe thought precedes matter. Mind informs matter. Mind informs matter. You get?
Well, that's the first Hermetic principle. All is mind, and from that stems everything else, which makes perfect sense to me. Is that all is mind, but that doesn't mean. So you wade between religion and New Age, and like New Age really just packages a lot of things that religion uh, did first, and puts it in a package that says, don't think about it and it won't happen. So like, just because we're talking about it right now, we're making it happen, man, because you're giving attention to where attention goes, energy flows. Well, that's true. That's true. That is true. If it weren't, there wouldn't be wars fought, and all of the billions of dollars spent, or the infinite amount of hours vested towards directing our attention. If humans were so effing powerful, why would so many people be spending so much time, effort, and energy into directing our focus? And specifically, why would they be spending all that time, effort, and energy directing it into fear? Like into a negative state, into a lower state, to where we can't even make any kind of a decision because the sky is just about to fall at any given moment. I lived a good part of my life in that state of mind, and it like, I'm still undoing the effects of living that way, and
It's stifling, and we're gonna come back to that. Let's say that this lower attribute or center, again, seeking expression, gives people thoughts and ideas and hands them all sorts of rituals, which may be a way of directing their conscious focus toward bringing this thing about. Maybe some people scoff at the idea of that, like, oh, if occult rituals are hooped on. A lot of people, a lot of Christians are very, very put off by that. Don't want to understand it. All rituals are all the devil. Well, the ones that we're speaking of, the one that I'm alluding to now, or set of rituals, I don't know. I don't participate in them, at least not consciously. One could argue that we're all participating in them, especially if we consume certain things in the little black box. The TV,
absolutely,
just projecting images all the time, maybe getting us to participate unwittingly, unknowingly in their rituals. And then it also seems from my study that a lot of the people, the powers that should not be in this world, believe very much in it.
Oh, you can't argue that
the symbols of the beast are everywhere. So to them, perhaps, like, it is not a joke. It's very real. And perhaps they have been led astray and given rise so much to their lower faculties, again, if things that govern physicality and power, that they consciously participate in the rituals and maybe perhaps do bring about a physical manifestation or representation of this adversarial force that we call Satan or Lucifer or Ahriman or what have you, these different things. So in that way, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. Was it this alien entity thing that is seeking expression through people and entering them via their lower faculties? And perhaps higher faculties too, if it exists in the mind, then it seeps through all systems. Again, man, let's not demonize our bodies and our inner sanctums and faculties here, they serve a purpose.
That's right.
Gravity is an exceptional function of this reality. It's not meant to necessarily be bucked against. It's meant to work with. Same in the way that our angers and our fears are not things that ought to be bastardized, but things to be utilized within us. But again, everything in balance, everything in flux.
Well, to me, probably of the 2 or 3 books that come to mind that really like blew the lid off of this whole devil character for me. The first one was most definitely Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And anyone that's watching this, if you've never heard of that book, yes, that book right there. That is
fantastic.
Like I've probably read it 4 or 5 times now. I would read it again if I had it here. It's
I wish I could
it's
find
fantastic.
Where the devil describes what
it's in the very beginning. It's in the very
Excellent.
beginning. You get into right when Hill really starts to get into the actual interview, and that's I was just gonna say in that book, you can choose to believe how it's written, and how it's written is that Napoleon Hill literally interviews the actual devil. And he explains how they did it and how he came to his answers. But once you read through the material, it's pretty difficult to deny that it'd be a pretty fair representation of what I would think of as the devil. And spoiler alert, he's not nearly as unlikable as as you might expect. And his description of himself to me is the one that resonates the most true with me, which is that he is the negative charge. Like we live in a dual universe. There is a positive charge and there is a negative charge. He is the negative charge. He's the projector. He's that which brings order out of the chaos. It's supremely masculine force. Hence they call him the light bearer. Or a lot of occult traditions refer to this entity as that. So I think when you read through that book, you'll find that, well, the devil doesn't actually do anything to anybody. We make choices, and maybe he presents a very shiny, sexy looking door to walk through, and we do that. But the devil is us, man. I mean, that to me, that is what it is, and it's our darkness, that which we refuse to acknowledge that we have the capacity for. And that's how we keep finding ourselves in these situations, both individually and as an aggregate, where our darkness, because we've ignored it and stuffed it down and pretended like that's not me, that's somebody else. It's always out here, right? It's always at the end of my finger pointing away from me. It's never looking back or pointing at the reflection. But that book, and the second book that I would suggest, which is extremely interesting, is Robert Seffer's 1666. That's really a little bit less about the devil and a whole lot more about where Satanism came from. And if I were the devil, I would definitely pick the 3 characters that pretty much single-handedly brought us the religion that we call Satanism. And, like even it was this major split in Judaism that gave rise to this. And it was this guy, Sabbatai Zevi, which Sabbatai means Saturn in Hebrew. And so, he said that he was the embodiment of Satan on earth. And his mantra was do whatever. The more profane, do whatever thou willst. To, the more profane, the better. Because the way you find God is by experience. And his what he was pushing was the more profane your experience, the more likely you are to to get back to God. And it was actually through sin you will be delivered. That was one of their big mantras. But it came out of Zoroastrianism, which is like came out of Iran or that area of of the Middle East. And like, so we're dealing with something that is really relatively not that old in terms of a religion, if you want to talk about Satanism. But true Satanism isn't the worship of Satan. It's basically the antithesis of Christianity. It's everything that we would think of as Christ or Christ-like inverted. And I think it's worth noting that in our studies into law, the powers that shouldn't be have inverted everything in law, in God's law, and turned it in, like they had turned the land into water. And so we're operating, even though we're walking on the land, the system of law that we're operating under is an admiralty. Well, it's a hybrid. It's not even true admiralty. It's like a colorable admiralty, which is the inversion of land. It's turning everything into water. And that's why all the water words are in our legal system. And so there's no mistaking there. But I think when you look at like a globalist agenda, if we want to don our tinfoil hats for a minute, the globalists are doing everything they can to turn things upside down, to blend it, right? There is no gender. There's whatever you want, whatever you feel like. It's cool. You can feel like a woman, you can be a woman. That's totally fine. Because ultimately what the real ritual is centered around the complete debasement, the complete embarrassment or shaming, or any number of words that you can put in that. That's what they're doing. That's their ritual, right? Is they're laying you before everyone and they're completely debasing. I mean, you look at the I don't know, you look at the Katy Perry halftime show, and and people, or that, what was the most recent one that was even more ridiculous at the Oscars or whatever, where it was the Sam Smith, and it was like so.
That one a few years ago.
Yeah, it was like so obviously satanic in nature.
It's very obvious and in our faces. It's a multifold thing of insensitizing us to these rituals that are shoved down our throats, and us actively participating in them if we're not a conscious observer and can see it for what it is and choose to either accept it consciously, God forbid, or reject it consciously, or again, God forbid, not see it at all, and subconsciously it seeps in and it plays out in our minds. And unless we're making conscious choices in our life, the subconscious is running the program. I talk about this all the time. Many people do, much wiser than I. Yes, it's absolutely. It's this blatant debasement, and you described it very well, inversion of everything. They've taken all of the holy concepts. I mean, even here as I'm describing Saturn, people it's giving thoughts and concepts like Satan, immediately taking them to places of evil, because that's how they're bastardizing these lower forces and enacting them out, when these things are divine, helpful tools. All thing is divine, all is God, various spectrums of it. Anger, fear, not that these things are, well, it's hard for me to even conceptualize that. I even almost said things like lust and greed, but it's hard to equate that to God. But if all is God, then I don't know. Then maybe God's got some explaining to do too. I think in summation, when we use the word God or creator or force, we are describing the forces of light, because all is light. I choose to believe there is really no such thing as darkness. There's just the appearance of darkness by the shadowing of light. There's really no absence of light.
That's right.
But these are really heady concepts, guys, and I'm not a very articulate person in the way that I would like to be, in the way that I admire some other people to being. I'm a songwriter, and I tend to do better when I spend times with things and writing them down. But I enjoy this podcast format so much. Bear with me. And if I repeat myself a lot, just imagine how many times I've heard it from. So would you like me to read here? I found
Yes.
What we were looking for in this book. And really, yes, we could do a whole podcast just reading a chapter of this book.
The book is
but
amazing.
I found three different spots, and And first, this is in the beginning when the interview kicks off, and the interviewer, Napoleon Hill. Again, this was 1938 that this was written, 1938, which I think will become even more profound as we get to some later things. So on page 62, one of his first questions, Napoleon Hill asks the devil, "Tell me something more about the world in which you live." "I live wherever I choose," answers the devil. "Time and space do not exist for me. I am a force best described to you as energy. My favorite physical dwelling place, as I have told you, is the minds of the earthbound. I control a part of the brain space of every human being. The amount of space I occupy in each individual's mind depends on how little and what sort of thinking that person does. As I have told you, I cannot entirely control any person who thinks."
So think about now, having read that, think about what has happened to, and just in my lifetime, I have watched the systematic dumbing down of the population through, well, and I'm going to use this term incredibly loosely, education, in the public miseducation system, through food, through all of the chemicals that are in everything from, our clothing to the houses that we live in to our air, that is being polluted with, I'm just going to say it, with chemtrails and radio frequencies or frequency that in any other application would be used to cook food, and that's what 5G is. It's the same thing that's in your microwave oven, and so there's all these different ways that we're being bombarded constantly with things that degrade our ability and retard our abilities to be a fully functioning human. And as I said in the previous discussion, we don't know what a fully functioning human is. We've never actually seen one, so if they can, when I say they, the powers that be, if they can dumb us down enough, well, the rest is going to be really easy, right? Because you just tell the herd to go this way and the herd does, and it exposes the few that are left that, think. And so, then whatever happens, which I want to touch on before we get out of this, because I think it's important that we have some sort of solution presented, that it isn't fear or negativity, even though that is, like, I've been feeling a heavy dose of negativity the past,
I
4 or
have as
5
well.
days.
I've been having a really hard time and finally getting out of the weeds for a short while.
Yeah.
For
now.
perhaps a good while. Yeah. Like, cause it comes in waves, we hit low points. You and I talk about this all the time, but the low does felt just really heavy, especially lately, didn't it? Doesn't it?
Man, like I said, I feel a tension, and my kids feel it, like my wife feels it, and a lot of people in my sphere who are not necessarily what I would call spiritual, not in the same way that you or I are. They're feeling it, man. Everyone is being spread awfully thin, and not just financially. Like there is a palpable tension, and if it feels this way now, just imagine how it's going to feel come October. Because I know there's that part of duality that is coming around, which is the good old selection, here in this country. And so when that happens, I would bet every dollar I've ever made times 2 that there's going to be a serious disruption in life as normal, either right before or just after that event, the selection event, because it just feels way too obvious that that's the direction that we're being taken to. And so the question is, will we have thought, well, like enough about what some kind of service disruption or just disruption as in life is normal, what is that going to look like? How's that going to affect us? And how are we going to handle it? Sadly, I had a what we referred to as like a philosopher's table, and a gentleman that I invited came and took place. And the topic that night was, do we have inherent rights? Like, do we come with rights at birth? And this individual was a former military guy. I'm not going to say what branch. Doesn't matter. He was not a special forces, but a elevated status of the branch of military that he was in. He wasn't just a standard soldier. He was, further up the ladder, more elite, if you will. He said something that really disturbed me, though, and it's unfortunately it's something that I've heard a lot from people in his community, and it was that like he basically said that he's made choices in his life and a way of living his life that he didn't feel any kind of need to prepare for anything, and should something occur that requires drastic action, then he's just going to go kicking doors and taking, because he knows a whole lot of people who are prepared, and he is trained to take from them. So that really bothered me, and it bothered me because I misjudged his character. And I don't try really hard not to judge people. I try to just kind of like let their acts tell me. But that told me a lot, and he actually reached out to me about coming out to our homestead and checking it out with his son. And I said it jokingly, but I know he understood. I said, "No, man, remember that conversation we had?" I said, "You ain't coming to kick my door." And he laughed. He's like, "I wasn't talking about that, man." I was like, "I know you weren't." I was like, "But you did say that, remember?"
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, the hell, dude. I mean,
people do weird things when, their comfort level's gone, or their
people
wife.
are weird motherfuckers, that is a disturbing one for someone to consciously admit that. It's hard for me right now to sit here and not pass negative judgment, and understand. And I mean, that's got to be a very insecure, fear-driven person who's in a desolate place too, and
survival of the fittest. He said two things. That it's survival of the fittest and might is right. That was the right. He said if we came with anything inherent, it's that might is right. And there was another gentleman there who was he got really, really like visibly upset at the more that this guy went on. And he finally like lashed out, and he said, "How long do you think that strategy works for you for survival?" He said, "How many doors do you think you kick before somebody finally kicks you back?" He said, "I pray that my door is the first one you kick." He goes, "Because I'll end it right then." And it was like, he got very tense, and it was just, but he's right. He's right, and in the challenge, and here's the dualistic nature of this, right? So if hell is unfolding in your experience around you, and you could use that term relatively, like let's say you have no power for extended periods of time, so you lose all of your food that you have stored, which is, for most people's cases, it's a week at the best, in most people's cases. All right, so you lose that food. There's no hope of it coming back. Now your climate-controlled environment starts to not be so awesome. Well, maybe water isn't, because your municipality might be out of power, so the water system isn't functioning. Like, things go to shit real fast. And then, everything in terms of every store, for that matter, works on the just-in-time shipping system, which means that, like, every store is only just a few days from completely being bare, especially in, like, a crazy situation where people panic and just, I believe that the whole toilet paper thing was a beta test. I do. I believe that was something that was, like, put out into the consciousness to see, like, to test. I personally believe the whole 2020 pandemic was a complete test. It was a test by the powers that be, because when they do act, they're going to act decisively. It's going to be bing, bing, bing. There's going to be a series of things that occur to steer us into a place that they want us to go. And the majority of people are going to willingly go running, even though they stand there and say, "I'll never accept digital currency. I'll never move into a 15-minute city. There's no way you're going to get a microchip in me." Oh, yeah? Yeah, I bet you in a week that would change. a week with no services as normal and under constant fear. Yeah, no, you'll change quick. You're going to see, unfortunately, you're going to see a lot of ugly things. I do believe that. Maybe not in our, location necessarily, but definitely in this country. Definitely in this country. And, so I don't know, man. I think the challenge is while hell is unfolding, can you traverse that with love and compassion as your MO? Can you feel sorry for the guy who feels the need to go kick doors because he's so afraid, and
Right.
and through compassion and love turn his heart? Like, could you stand in the face of him looking down the barrel of his gun while he's telling you he's about to rob you and your family, and somehow come up with the right words that change his mind? And not only change his mind, but turn him into, instead of an adversary, into an asset of some sort.
There's been many stories. It's funny that you mentioned that. Just one I listened to of this Aikido master last night. There's been many stories of martial arts masters who, and especially we have a very, very defunct understanding here in the West of many things, and martial arts, of course, as well. But where all these self-defense practices were always to diffuse situations, like violence as the absolute last resort. Because a man who seeks to dominate another man, I believe as well, has already in his mind has been broken from the rhythmic flow of the universe. He is separate and alone and naked from the universe. So it's all about bringing him back in, not, and I know that's easier said than done. I don't necessarily, I don't want to say that I don't allow my mind to go down these places, because I certainly do, because I do, but I don't know that it's necessarily healthy to always put it in this, well, if I'm in this scenario, I'm going to do this. But I know enough about myself. I mean, come on. We are both loving people who are protectors as well. We are men, and we are going to defend physically if we have to, when we have to. It's not a question like we were talking about yesterday about responding and reactionary, and how these dualistic concepts, and we'll hear in the new age circles, and it's absolutely true, to be, you want to respond and not react. Generally, maybe almost all the time, but there is a time for quick reaction where you don't think about it. So perhaps that is where our lower forces come into play. Sure. And come into assistance, and don't let them dominate the course of our lives. But in that moment, maybe force be met with force. But as generally being, yes, with love and compassion, man. And I want to say too, I want to offer not a opposition, because of course you and we're not here to oppose each other. We're here to work with each other.
Right.
But with the notion of, man, it's clear too that yes, I accept the fact of we're being poisoned all around us, and it pisses me off. Not to the point of taking foolish measures to try to change anything, and not to be a defeatist either, but to be accepting of all of these things that do not look good. All of these things that is manifestations of suffering. We are here. We are suffering beings. There is joy and there is sorrow. And there's certainly a lot of sorrow. But man, we have this bombardment too of this negative vision, of this dystopia, and what so many people, even my favorite podcasters, feel like we can't shake this image of this impending catastrophe. And I'm not here to ask people to bury their heads in the sand by any means, to like close their eye to the woes of the world. By all means, inform yourself with research, but at some point too, perhaps it's healthy to momentarily close the book on some of this influx of information forming in our minds these visions of a dystopian future where these things are going to play out. Again, if we believe we are manifestors, then let's create a beautiful vision for the world in our minds. And I know to some people who how easy that is to scoff at that. And it makes me very sad that concepts of one love is cliched, and these higher aspirations are scoffed at, or ha, flower child, you know. I don't know, man. I'm one of the more edgier, fiery people that I know sometimes. I'm not, it's not all love and light over here, but my overarching theme, what gives me hope, is a vision of joy. And I'm going to defiantly and stubbornly keep putting that vision out into the universe, because there is a constant and conscious bombardment of this information, which is absolutely steering us where they want us to go, not where we want to go, but this vision that they have, which we have to enact out to bring it to fruition. We're always the ones that bring it to fruition. Are you following my thought here? So perhaps it's all meant to look really bad and never meant to look positively good,
Right.
or hopeful, but it looks really bad on the internet. That's sure as shit. Most of the things that we read, most of the things that we listen to, this influx of information, but I maintain in my day-to-day interactions, outside of all of this rhetoric about the world, is positive interactions with people. The majority of my interactions are positive interactions. I feel bad for people if that's not their generality too, and sometimes I wonder if it's there. I think there's a level of attraction there too. I try to put positivity out, and a certain neutrality or balancing of forces too, where maybe there is a saying, like attracts like. So maybe again, it's a chicken and the egg thing. Am I just on the receiving end of it? Am I bringing it to me? Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. But would you not agree? Like, at least here and now, while things are bad, they're also not that bad.
No.
You know what I mean? And so to me, that's evidence of. I think about it a lot. Like, if the forces of evil were destined, then the world would already, like, it would have already be done. Like, we wouldn't be here, because they've supposedly done this. We've supposedly reached this point time and time and time again. Yet here we are talking to each other through this device in the comfort of our home, built, yes, with artificial means and these things that are not necessarily helpful for us in the purest of ways. But here we are, generally having a pretty good life. So that seems to be the norm, and I believe that norm can and should prevail. Norm in the sense of the good things, But again, I'm stubbornly defiant and hopeful person because I'm choosing to.
Well,
I'm going to choose to.
It's you have to. And you touched on something that I want to highlight, which is when we look at things, what we're looking at though has been curated very specially for us. And there's no argument by any thinking person at this point that media is overwhelmingly controlled by the same entity, the same forces that are pushing these certain narratives on us, that are, meet in Davos, Switzerland, a couple of times a year in their private jets so that they can wag their finger at everybody driving cars or wanting to eat meat and tell them how evil they are and how much carbon, they're releasing. Well, motherfucker, we're made out of carbon, So anyway, I don't want to get off into that, but the point is they control the narrative, and the people who put out alternative narratives get every bit of resistance that they can get put in their path so that message doesn't get out, because they know that we're so close right now to that magic number of awakened people where there's no hope of controlling. I saw a great drawing the other day, and it was like this huge boardroom table, and there are all these like Monopoly-esque type CEO of old looking guys sitting around playing a giant game of Monopoly. But the table was laid upon the backs of the people. And the caption, caption said, all we have to do is stand up and end the game. So like where this is all going right now, it has to go. The system, the matrix, the beast, it's all one and the same. It has to come down. Well, first of all, it's not sustainable. It's gonna come down. All right. Second of all of the forces involved in this, the dark, the light, the people in between, we all want it to collapse, or we've all said we do. We're certainly giving plenty of thought energy to the ideas of it. I said back in the spring when I said that, boy, they're planting a lot of seeds of fear right now, aren't they? When that Civil War movie popped off, and the Leave the World Behind, that piece of shit dirtbag movie, came out, and to just again to give you, to make you hopeless, to just paint this picture of complete dystopia. There's no use in trying to do anything except for what you're told, because we're going to keep you safe and save your democracy. You stupid slaves, follow us. We got you. But you can listen to them in their own words. People like Dr. And I don't know what he's a doctor of, but Noble Harari, tell you from the WEF, tell you gleefully that, we've conquered nature's God. We'll never die anymore. We're going to download our consciousness into a computer and then upload it into an avatar that we create. Death is it's a thing of the past. They're terrified. They're psychotic, and they're terrified, and that's what they're projecting.
A fearful fucking individual.
Sad, man. And so that type of individual, I have a real hard time feeling love and compassion for. I see that. Like, I recognize that. I struggle with anger and like how to turn that from destructive, like just rage, into more like righteous indignation, where like I'm pissed because the world is so fucked up and I can't leave this kind of world to my children. So I've got to do something about it. And like that something can't be burning and, like just taking a flamethrower to everything. That's not it. And, the other aspect of this is, the more I learn about law, or the way that the matrix actually functions, the more I realize that system, it works perfectly. It's corrupted, but it's not the function of the system to be inherently corrupt. It's the people who screw it all up. And so,
through our lack of thinking,
yes,
through our lack of active thinking,
yes.
Because there are many thoughts. We passively have thoughts all the time. I don't believe we are generators of thoughts, not necessarily all thoughts. I think we thoughts come from the field, from the torsion field. They're within us. All thoughts, all sorts of different thoughts passing over minds, once presented and handed to us all the time. But not enough people actively think, which is true in formation and out formation, to form in our minds a picture and to see it through and to take the necessary steps to get there, but it all starts with the thought. And if we are not actively thinking, we're being actively thought for.
That's right.
For sure. I think too, it's helpful, perhaps, man, for if we zoom out enough, where these sickos that we have a hard time at best loving, very easy time, hating, being angry at. And again, if we can use a word, perhaps, again, if we zoom out far enough to our higher selves from a spiritual perspective, of adversary as teachers, we came here to play, and we tell ourselves to, perhaps in a way, just to help, and also sensing that there is a very strong anecdote of truth in there too. That why so serious? It's not all so serious. We're here for play as well. Like, we came here for it, and it is fucked up. It's really hard not to. It's very hard to zoom out and not to get pulled in all the time, but they want us zoomed in all the time. They want us down here, they don't want us up here and out here. Because if we zoom out far enough, we can look and say, oh, yeah, some of my best teachers were my hardest moments, were my darkest aspects of self that embarrassed me to the point of like, maybe I shouldn't. That embarrassed me, hurt me physically, emotionally, etc., to make actions that were maybe a little bit more wholesome too. You know, and then I've been on the opposite end of that, where I've turned the cheek enough and put myself in situations where let myself be taken advantage of maybe by perhaps good intentions and wanting the best out of others all the time, when the evidence is there that it's not, instead of allowing perhaps my lower fires to open up and say, no, fuck no. Right? That there's a time and a place, you know, and it's all in play. I laugh at it on my better days when I'm far enough away. But right now, when we're in the weeds, it's pretty hard. It's hard to laugh at. But I think it's necessary to keep that sense of comic relief and playfulness with it all. Of it's not all so serious. And we, as you and I both know, or at least very strongly suspect, this physicality is an illusion anyway.
That's right.
You know, and
it's just
and energy. I know that when I'm on my harder days, I don't want to hear that shit, because it feels a lot like I've used the word spiritual bypassing, and it feels very inhumane to say that, well, we're not really here, like it doesn't matter, as you know, the word matter, physical matter, that it doesn't matter anyway. A lot of the time you don't want to hear like that when we're feeling such deep feelings and such strong emotions anyway. And I agree with that too. Like, in a sense it's an illusion, yet in a sense it is very real. You know, it's somewhere between all these things, which is this beautiful, awful, divine, wretched existence that we found ourselves in. But perhaps it doesn't have to be so wretched, you know. If we need to start looking for, if the whole thing, if we can accept, and I do accept that it is collapsing, you know, that it is metaphorically burning to the ground, then what do I want to see rebuilt? And that's really overwhelming for me sometimes, you know. That's having to zoom way far out. So zooming in, what do I want to see rebuilt? I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. But I know that I want almost a continuation of the good things that we have in the right here and now. I want a continuation of the technology that we enjoy right here and now. I want a continuation of this beautiful earth space that we live. I want our plants to flourish. I want us to live in a world without poison. I want easy access to good food. I don't want laws standing in the way of us growing whatever medicines that we need to take care of ourselves, you know. I'm not necessarily opposed to the world of commerce in a whole. I don't subscribe to the idea that there is such a thing as a free lunch. I think that it is simply put, a law of the universe. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Everything has a cost. I don't necessarily believe that the barter system was working for us, because I don't think we would have had the advent of the idea of money and commerce anyway. Because let's say if you're a carpenter and I'm a baker and I need a house built, my bread is not going to do much for you when it comes to building a house, but this agreed upon medium. But I want something in place that's more reflective of my true time and efforts than this thing that compounds debt, that is ascribed to me upon birth, and the signature of this birth certificate, in this advent of the Social Security classification of a number. The hairs on my head are numbered, but I'm not a fucking number. I have numbers that appear in my life, but I don't want to be a number and have this debt system that I did not literally sign up for, you know, upon birth. Nobody asked me about what amounts of interest I'm okay with accumulating based upon this number that was ascribed to me on birth, like I'm a piece of fucking property. I want to live in a world that's not so goddamn complex. You know, I want some simplicity. And it's very overwhelming to think about how to achieve that. But I do believe there's something to be said in focusing on the here and now and the things in front of us. What can we do to make our lives better, and our beginning with our day to day and moment to moment right now, you know. And I know that sometimes it feels like we haven't done shit or completed shit. Well, when I look around, on my better days, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like I did get around to putting that painting up. I did get around to replacing this like broken ass couch over here. I did get around to completing that task that I've been putting off. I did put in a water filter finally, because instead of just bitching about how much the water smells like chlorine and how it's fluoridated, I found one of the most kick-ass filters that I could find for my house, for me and my child, that was within my budget. There's better things out there, and there's better systems yet. No, I shouldn't need it, but it's what I can do right now.
That's right.
Sometimes all I can do is go to work and be the best people that I can be for the people around me,
I heard it said the other day, and it really stuck with me. What can you do right now with what you have to make change? Like, there's no excuse. You can't say, well, if I just have a little more money, then I can have this. Or if then, like so many of us get caught in that trap. Like, oh, I'll be happy when blank. Or if I could just get this, then I can do.
Just thinking about that.
If I can get blank, I'll do this. Like, no. What can you do right now with what you have that can make changes? Every single person can do something, and that was actually something that like really frustrated me, a couple of days ago, which was that, there's people in my life who constantly want to provide resistance, but there's never a solution. Their solution is, well, why can't you just get on board with how things are done? Well, because how things are done is wrong. It's like the antithesis of what I think God intended for us, and I think so my take on the whole garden, if you want to go down that for a second, the Garden of Eden, we didn't get kicked out of the garden. The devil didn't come and trick us into, knowing the difference between good and evil. We left. We made some decisions, and we left the garden. And because we knew of good and evil, we started focusing more on the darkness and crude representation through technology. That is what technology is. It's a crude representation of something that already exists in nature. I love my technology. Don't get me wrong. The fact that we can sit here right now, a couple 100 miles apart and have this conversation and, like, is pretty awesome. I like electricity. I don't like the way that it's manufactured. But our technology is reflective of us. So it's dirty and unsustainable because humanity in its current way of being is dirty and unsustainable. Like we will annihilate ourselves if we keep going down this path. That's why we're coming to this place where it's like, I think that it's a very specific period of time, which we're living through right now, like say into the next 10 years, that this shit's going to get sorted out. And I don't mean like completely, I mean the direction that this goes. Either it goes towards the ultimate, left-hand dark shit that they're beaming into our consciousness, or it makes a right turn and it starts, unfolding in completely different ways. The more I study about the crypto market and what so many of these different technologies really represent, it's decentralization. It's a decoupling from the central authority. Like, you want to be private, you want to do commerce privately as free men and women. Well, we can do that with these different technologies, and yes, they require a computer, and yes, it requires electricity, and all of that shit. So I don't seek to go back to like some way of, I don't want to be Amish. Maybe that's the better way. I don't know. Maybe it is. But I don't think that the technology thing has been let out of the bag. Okay, it's already out here. There's no putting it back in short of the earth, or the sun frying everything electrical. And, and even then, I'm not so sure that I think there's other technologies that have been suppressed that they could very quickly get things like right back up and running again if they were allowed to be. Because again, when I was really stuck in conspiracy land, like there isn't any direction you can go when it comes to energy and not see like a very concerted effort by the big money, the same names that we know now and that were stamping out innovation, that were crushing anything that they didn't have a direct control over. And so, that's if we could get rid of that hidden hand, we don't know what we could be. We don't know where this all leads. I personally, that's why I'm optimistic. That's why I stay optimistic, because I believe that the vast majority, overwhelming majority of humans are community minded. And what I see as solutions is volunteerism. Like this line of thinking is ultimately going to end government, because we all can come to the conclusions that governments are not necessary. We can govern ourselves way more efficiently, way more effectively. And people are like, "Oh, well, how would we have infrastructure if there was no taxes?" You don't think we couldn't figure out how to pave a fucking road or lay some water main in the ground or anything else? You don't think we could figure that out without all of these layers of bureaucracy? Like, really? That's a wet paper bag. You can't
Like, assuming that there's smart people in there right now, you know
my
what
God,
I mean?
right?
These are the intelligent people that do it. Like architects hold government office. They don't.
Listen to the words that the main two candidates. One of them is pretty much incapable of a whole string of thoughts. Like that individual cannot make a coherent statement without cackling or laughing or like making some weird.
I know he's worse at talking to people than I am.
Yeah, right. And then there's that one. Then there's the other one who is using words like bigly and like just says dumb shit. He just said or like it's everything is the best. Like, oh, my mother, the greatest mother that's ever lived. I took a shit today. It was the best shit ever. The best toilet.
There's been some nice shit's taken, but my shit very huge, very good.
Yeah,
very
it's
nice.
always the best, right? Well formed. But the point is, these are not people who should be leading anyone. This is the best representation of what it means to be led by the most powerful, best country on earth. Like, give me a break, man. We need to set the bar a hell of a lot higher. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be seeking to do that. And unfortunately, we have to go through this like weird, chaotic period because so few of us are willing to have these conversations now when we still actually have a semblance of normalcy. And so like when whatever magic switch gets flipped, and at this point it's like that simple. They could literally shut our internet down or our electric off by flipping a switch. Like it's pretty much that serious, that simple. They could shut the financial system down by flipping a switch.
They have before. As we were sitting, I was just thinking about this of how many, probably every damn generation felt the feeling of like the world is going to end, if not this decade, then the next decade. I don't think tensions are very high. I mean, more so in my life than I have experienced before, in the complexity. But I don't know that things are necessarily any worse than they were before. The more that I think about it, I think that we're exposed to a lot more of it, which can be a beautiful thing when we arm ourselves with knowledge to the extent that we can take a conscious direction. Then I say, like, learn it all, look to it all, as to not turn a blind eye to anything. But what is making sense to me, too, is perhaps when we have studied something enough and understood it, if there is nothing that we can do about it, I'm suggesting that perhaps don't fight what we cannot do anything about, not turn a blind eye to it. But again, you're talking to a person who craves practicality and tangible solutions, and these are big, heady concepts, folks. And I'm sorry that I'm not a source of necessarily tangible solutions. It's very ironic to me that while I seek them, and on my dark days when I scour my subscriptions for the people that I look to with admiration in a sense of hope when they don't seem to have solutions either, that necessarily curtailed to the specific situations and problems at hand in my life. I want to beat my head against the wall, and that was something that dawned on me lately, is just too much influx of complexity, that so many different directions and options. We are very blessed with all of the different options that we are afforded, but we are definitely burdened with many doors, and at some point got to get to stepping.
Well,
Enlightenment, it can be found in the most mundane of tasks too, and it's perhaps through following our joys and our natural inclinations. I was, and goodness, folks, I'm going to get back to the outwitting the devil here in a moment, because it pertains to it. But Jared, did you see today? I was on lunch break at work, and Jean from this channel that we both subscribe to. Again, in addition to subscribing and liking our channel, please do share it far and wide. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel Inspired.
I was just going to bring him up.
Jean had this, it started, I'm only a few minutes into it. It opens with this European gentleman who is describing the system with which America has been taken over with, and to the speed of which, Lenin's Marxism has been infiltrated, has been shoved down our throats and implanted into our minds like worms in our ear. And it started through a campaign that lasts over 20 to 25 years of a demoralization.
That's Yuri Bezmenov. That's the Russian defector, right? That it's a Russian guy, and he's okay. Go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes. No, that's him. I believe that it has to be the gentleman. I didn't get his name. I only got this. Was just a soundbite, and I didn't get to John's portion. I'm going to be watching it later.
Okay.
And I had the mind to. But it was 20 to 25 years of that. And then 5 to 10 years through academic circles of convincing the scholars of the woes of capitalism. I would argue false capitalism.
That's right. We don't have capitalism.
We never really saw this. I'm not a fan of any isms, folks, but if we can look at the ideals of capitalism, which is thing that seems sensible, we've never really been allowed to have that. Not in my lifetime. No. You know what I mean?
No, we do not have.
So it's very easy to look at capitalism like look at this misogynistic, just like wretched thing over here, which is ruining everyone's lives. We need to level the playing field, and not even realizing what people are saying, realizing that all these professors, these academic and political, geological, and financial influencers don't even realize that these thoughts are not their own, because again, modern man does very little active thinking. It's a lot of passive thoughts and regurgitation, and so they've been duped into spewing this garbage, which has become our norms, and it's Americans doing it to Americans.
Yes.
And the whole damn time, always looking at all these foreign different entities. Now, they're certainly there. I believe there is a cooperation among, let's say, on every continent, at least one overarching dynasty who may not even be from where they're from. Oh gosh, I'm getting to the weeds. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, like we are our enemy here from within. I have long been concerned with the terrorists at home, not the terrorists abroad.
Yes, agreed. And I will second that. John's channel, Inspired. If you've never gone there or never heard it, man, he's been banging it lately. Just one fantastic show after another, and lots of solutions. He is a reader of the Ringing Cedars, which we have brought up here. And that was actually going to be the third books that I mentioned. While she doesn't get into what we would call the devil, she definitely talks about the dark forces. And again, to me, the most complete spiritual text that you can find, in my opinion, is the Ringing Cedar series of books. They have continued to inspire me. They continue to have like dramatic impacts on my life and others around me. And
Yeah.
I just really can't. Every time I go back to it,
I think it's like a combination of Buddhism and Christianity for the modern man.
Yeah.
It's modernly applicable and understandable, and the deeper truths are all the same.
Yeah.
And she maintains, I'm a man just like you. My faculties are just not dulled. I
Right.
actively think. I actively manifest.
Well, she would be what I would consider like the potential of a fully functioning capital M man. Anastasia is the embodiment of that.
I suspect the same.
And so
I think what we were describing this infiltration, I'm gonna go ahead to page 107 here.
Sure.
107.
It's coincidence, I'm sure.
So the question, okay. Anyway, Napoleon Hill's question. I don't know what they were talking about before. I'll probably reread this for the 4th time, y'all, because I love this book. Oh my goodness, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, one of the best-selling books of all time. He said, his question, your explanation clears up the matter. Now go ahead and tell me some of your other tricks with which you allure people into drifting. Drifting is, by the way, to sum up, drifting is what we've been alluding to here. Passive thinking.
Distraction.
Inactivity in one's own life. Distraction, overall drifting. They do define it outright, but anyway, I digress. This was like an aha for what we were talking about. So the devil's answers for one of his other tricks with which he lures people into drifting. One of my most effective tricks is known to you as propaganda. This was 1938, y'all. This is the instrument of greatest value to me in setting people to murdering one another under the guise of war. The cleverness of this trick consists mainly of the subtlety with which I use it. I mix propaganda with the news of the world. I have it taught in public and private schools. I see that it finds its way into the pulpit. I color moving pictures with it. I see that it enters every home where there is a radio. This before TVs. I inject it into the billboard, newspaper, and radio advertising. I spread it in every place of business where people work. I use it to fill the divorce courts, and I make it serve to destroy business and industry. It is my chief instrument for starting runs on banks. My propagandists cover the world so thoroughly that I can start epidemics of disease, turn loose the dogs of war, or throw business into a panic at will. 1938.
And another thing that was really interesting is right when that whole story first starts, right where it first starts, he goes down a list that he's like very smug, right, and he demands that Hill call him Your Highness.
Oh, yeah, Your Majesty.
Your Majesty, that's it, right. And so he's talking about how he's tricked the entire population into smoking cigarettes, and that they're going to go from smoking 1 pack of cigarettes to 2 or 3, and like women are they're going to fancy it, and like he predicted what absolutely came true, in this rich diet that he's going to get people to become obese and slow of thought because they're just so, in all this rich food. And you look around and, and the section that he talks, there's like a 2-page part where he says what we should teach children as opposed to what children are taught in school.
Yes.
Man.
Yes.
I wanted to like write that on my wall. It was that section is so powerful.
I'm going to reread this thing again for like the 4th time through because it's an easy read too.
Really
it's not.
Yeah, it's real easy read. It's very compelling.
So on page 134 while we're on it, and then I'll put the book down. Napoleon Hill's question. That reminds me to ask you to tell me more about yourself. Where, in addition to the minds of people, do you dwell and operate? Answer. I operate wherever there is something I can control and appropriate. I have already told you that I am the negative portion of the electron of matter. I am the explosion and lightning. I am the pain and disease and physical suffering. I am the unseen general in warfare. I am the unknown commissioner of poverty and famine. I am the executioner extraordinaire at death. I am the inspirer of lust after the flesh. I am the creator of jealousy and envy and greed. I am the instigator of fear. I am the genius who converts the achievements of men of science into instruments of death. I am the destroyer of harmony in all manner of human relationships. I am the antithesis of justice. I am the driving force in all immorality. I am the stalemate of all good. I am anxiety, suspense, superstition, and insanity. I am the destroyer of hope and faith. I am the inspirer of destructive gossip and scandal. I am the discourager of free and independent thought. In brief, I am the creator of all forms of human misery, the instigator of discouragement and disappointment. And then Napoleon's question, and you do not call that cold and cruel? Answer, I call that definite and dependable.
Yeah. Pretty hard to refute that, right? And again, it's written in such a way that you have to choose to believe, is this fact or fiction? And really, it's irrelevant because the material is so powerful that you walk away from it going, "No, man, there's a lot of truth here. What is being said is really resonates and feels honest." And that's why it took that manuscript like 70 years to actually be published. It was like a hot potato passed around in his family because it was very damning of religion, of of all of the structures of society.
Yes, incredibly damning of religion and Christianity
Specifically, yes.
Specifically, which makes sense because specifically it was a traditionally Christian audience, where it's, and the idea in Christianity was that it was, I wish I could find that too to read it to the people perhaps another time, that the idea was making this idea of the devil so scary and external of one's being that they didn't want to look at it, it as this thing that was other than, rather than owning these aspects. And this is my generalization, summation of what he was saying, but that it would seep in fear and ignorance, not seeking to understand because of the dogma, believing that is ungodlike, that is blaspheme to God to try to seek to understand something.
Sure.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Church was one of his favorite places.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. How dare you use the faculties that God gave you to discern truth? What
this age is about done.
Well, so I would like to pivot a little bit into some other areas that this theme of duality keeps rearing its head, and like we've hammered on religion for about 3 hours. We should probably let it rest, but politics is easy, and I'm afraid that there are so many people that have outsourced their ability at this point to see any solution, that they're it's like it's tribalized. It's like there are radicals on all sides, and
like choose this idea, choose that idea. Your idea is shit. You know what I mean? No one's giving credence to their individual idea and what that might look like.
That's right.
That's how I feel. I always feel like I'm trying to be pulled into a camp,
right,
into opinions that are not my own.
Well, that's why less than half of the country actually votes. Okay, so that in of itself is pretty telling. That's pretty telling of the system when you look at it. And of a country of 350-ish million people, less than half of them are actually getting out and doing the voting thing. Now, you already know where I'm at on that. Like, why would I give a fuck about who's going to be the next CEO of the corporation? and play the selection game. Now, I will say, and you actually, I think you're the one that sent it to me. Trump says some things from time to time that just makes me go, whoa, we're like, he just dropped a mega truth bomb there. And it was a mean tweet that he put out to a journalist. And the context of it was the 14th Amendment. And, he was like, you're sitting here, like going on and on to me about, something about reporting. He's like, what you should be reporting on is the 14th Amendment and how it's
Yeah.
enslaved, it enslaved the
I,
population. You have it?
I'll read. Yeah, I'll read it. I do. The tweet was, "You people trying to insult my intelligence if I read the U.S. Constitution."
That's it.
Okay, how many of you able to figure out how the 14th Amendment works? In case nobody knows, the infamous 14th Amendment was designed to put people as legal fiction, giving up your rights for privilege and immunities. By voting for me or anyone in office, you committed a crime against your Republican form of governments. Try to figure that out first and then ask me if I read the U.S. Constitution.
That's Donald Trump who said that. Okay. By voting for me, you committed a crime against humanity. He said that. How powerful. I mean, I got to give it to you, Donnie. That was a pretty amazing drop of the
It's like a
bomb
thing.
there.
It's like a thing that they do. It's like they have to speak the truth too. I've thought about this for a long time, and had it reciprocated by another channel that I really like, The Alchemist, when she talks about the oh goodness, what is the word that they use for it? It'll come to me and I'll bring it up in some later episode. But let's just say the deflection of immediate karma. It's almost this idea among let's loosely use the word Satanist, if you will, of I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm doing, and that will deflect a little bit,
Sure. Sure.
of immediate karma, negative karma coming back to me. You're going to enact it out. We are the hands,
Right.
We are the star people, the 5-pointed people. That we are the hands that do the digging and do the plowing. And it's like, which vision do we serve though? Our own, God's, the devil's, you know what I mean? All these different visions they have for us to enact though. And we reap the immediate karma of those actions, in the sense of a soldier going to war for some. Well, you would get mad at the generals, like these old people who are certainly bought and paid for, it's young men going and dying for old man's wars, and in reality, a lot of the time, especially if we ever read anything like All Wars Are Bankers' Wars,
That's a video
but the
on
banker
YouTube.
doesn't have the immediate karma of that. Now, I like to believe, or rather, I've experienced in my life that karma is inevitable for everybody. And we think of things in a righteous indignation sense of they're going to get justice, they're going to get theirs. That's when we're pissed. But the truth is, if we look at justice, look at the word. It just is. The hammer swings. And I feel like they have been trying to outrun that backswing for so long by deflecting. And now perhaps for them, and they know it, the time is up. Their window is closing.
Yes.
And they're, for lack of a better word, because it's one of my favorite words, they're fucked.
Well, they're going to try to scare you into their fake simulation of creation, right? Run into this metaverse. Your money is gone, but don't worry. We've got it all right here in the form of digital credits. It was all insured by the FDIC. You're good. Just come download this app and, you can get all of your credits back. But, when you do that, then that 14th Amendment U.S. citizen slave that old Donnie was talking about, you are property of the corporation, and you will not say no to anything. You will do what is told of you, or they will physically do it to you, because you do not have rights. You have privileges / benefits, not immunities. Okay, and that's something that I hammer on all the time in this legal end of things. Like, what's it going to take for you to understand that as a in the U.S. anyway, as a U.S. citizen, you do not have rights. And rights don't come from that Constitution, by the way. I've heard a lot of people in the patriot movement, oh, we're a constitutional republic and we get our rights. That Constitution gave us our rights. That Constitution literally exists to limit government. That's all it is. That's all it did. That's all it ever will do. It is literally a limitation of what government can be in this country, allegedly. But we've long since abandoned that document. The Bill of Rights literally points out what the founders believed is true. That's what inalienable rights meant, that you just got them because you were born, not because we granted them to you or because government.
It's not that complex, though.
No,
Even arguing about it makes me want to pull my hair out. My dad said a good one the other day too when we were talking about that. When I was talking about I don't even really pay credence to this document, the Constitution, or this Bill of Rights, as in the misunderstanding and illusion that you're speaking to, that it grants us rights, as it in most other countries as well, that if it weren't for these documents, and that's why they're sacred, and that's why these things need to be adjusted, is not that complex. We live in times where we're being bombarded with also a moral ambiguity in all areas, not taking a stand. And I know that it's a very tough juxtaposition too when we're talking about duality and talking about balance. But there's wabi sabi. There's a little time for this and a little time for that. It's not all perfectly and it's not all balanced, but we know truth and we know right and wrong, like in our hearts. I choose to believe that, and it's, for me, observable, even in my child, that I don't have to necessarily teach right or wrong. Appropriate and inappropriate in social situations, yeah, that's something that is taught, but this sense of right or wrong just seems to prevail within. So, but I digress. My dad's great example. He's like, when I'm talking to people that are point to it has to be in a document, that's where rights come from, that's where more rights are derived. Okay, how about this? Did slaves have rights? Do slaves have the right to be free? I mean, what is your answer?
My answer to that is
without it being in paper. Nobody slaves
has a right to have slaves, in my opinion.
Do we have to have a piece of paper that says that?
No.
Why?
Because
you just know it. You don't even have to think about it.
Right.
It's not that fucking complicated.
Right.
We're presented with complicated convolution. Situation after situation after situation, problem after problem after problem, that we think we have to get up here and posture and use fancy words and try to solve and sound astute and sound literate and the person that's more articulate and gleeful and shiny like Mr. Obama that sounds the best is going to be the one that gives us like hope and change and all this bullshit. It's not that complicated, y'all.
Right.
You feel it, man. You feel it. We know what's right. We know it's not right. Let's live for what's right. Choose right in our moment-to-moment, day-to-day interactions. And when you don't, own it. You don't have to beat yourself up for it, but learn from it and own it. This is our way out of the shit, is doing the right thing. There is a right thing in any given situation. And the right thing in one situation is not necessarily the right thing in the other situation. But I can't stand being ployed like in college, these philosophy classes of like, which is the right thing? Saving the one man. What's the more righteous thing? Saving the one man lying in front of tied to a train track moving with a train coming down, or 10 people, like which one is more worthy? Like, what a mind fuck. You know what I mean? Like, what a waste of time.
Right.
And a waste of morality. That's not, it's not that complicated. They want to complicate everything. You see what I'm getting to here?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. No, you're right about that, man. It's but again, and this leads us back to this, this question of dualism, is that we're distorting that which is pretty simple to begin with. And it's through these layers of distortion that you're being presented with illusions that we're calling choice. But is it really, or are you, what are you ultimately serving by even entertaining these things or by involving yourself in them, are we supporting the forces of positive change by participating in the ritual of selection? We all go down and we check our little box and we get our little sticker that says, I voted today. And then we can go and say, you don't have a right to bitch, Clayton, because you didn't vote. You slacker, you. What's the matter with you? And which I would say that's ridiculous. I get the most case to bitch because you are the one who put this shit in place, and you're the dum-dum who will sit here and tell me that, well, you got to pick the lesser of two evils because that's just what we do.
Consciously choose evil. That's what we do. That's what we do. It's my civic duty. It's the least that we can do.
Right.
Is participate in this thing that is rigged anyway. What a waste of time. It's not that complicated.
Right.
It's not that complicated.
Right.
We have to choose the right thing. Zoom out when it's appropriate and zoom in when it's appropriate. I don't know. That's where I'm at right now anyway. And I know that it's more nuanced than what we're speaking to here is big, complicated, interwoven shit. Even though I just said it's not that complicated, I'm going to contradict myself time and time again with how I'm feeling. But to me, that's a nexus. It's a starting point of simplifying our approach to life by not being drawn into these complex situations that have no solutions. I would like to think that the complexities of light and dark and this dance of multitude of energies, what we're speaking here, it is a complicated thing, but it's not a fruitless endeavor. There's solutions within our control that lie within it. You know what I mean? If I may justify my bullshit for a minute.
No,
I may justify my BS. It's not bullshit. It's my BS. It's my belief systems. It rings true to me. This is fruitful work. This talk and these types of conversations matter. Some conversations don't matter. Like evil, which of the lesser of two evils should be our daddy to lead us down a path to the same place, a world that is not ours, an idea that is not ours. His story,
right?
History.
Well, I read a study maybe a week or so ago that was really interesting. And what they did was they asked, what are the top 10 values of blank, certain civilizations, certain societies? Iran, China, Saudi Arabia, America, all the major countries that we would think of, especially the ones that you hear in the media these days, were involved in this study. And out of the 10 things, everyone polled had 8 in common. So that in of itself, and the 8 were, it's all basic shit. Like, I want to have a clean place to live. I want to live in a safe city. I want my kids to be able to grow up in a better situation than I had. And I want clean water and access to food and healthcare. It's all like the same basic premise that every single human wants. But instead, we're given things like your race to focus on, something that none of us had any choice in to begin with, or where you live. You're an American. Well, what does it mean to be an American, man? America's a big fucking place. And what used to unite us was the idea that, everyone was created equal. And I believe very strongly that concept, that the founding concept of this country is not only worth saving, but it needs to be shared because we're the only place in the world that is doing that. That's a problem. That's a major problem. So in that sense, I am patriotic. But these people who are look at the flag and, have this awestruck reverence for this piece of material that does not mean what those people are putting it into. And a lot of those people are military people who I have mad respect for being willing to put their lives aside, their families aside.
Something that they believe
in. But let's be real here, man. Let's be really real. That misplaced sense of valor because were any of the conflicts that this country has ever been involved in, maybe short of the revolution from Britain, if that went down the way that it's been told to us, were any of the conflicts that these men, took part in, were they worthy? Like, how did a Hitler come to be in the first place? Well, he was given a shitload of money by an American banking cartel. Okay, that's not a disputable fact. That's an easily provable one. So it's easy to say, well, Hitler would have never had the ability to make war if he didn't get a shitload of money from the same banking names that you see over and over again.
And America poked and poked and poked and poked Japan, like egging it on America, as in, the powers that should be. Yeah, it's. I mean, we could do this all day with every war. The Gulf of Tonkin event.
Sure, sure.
Shit, man, we don't. Yeah, I don't need.
Yeah, we don't need to go off that way. But my point in mentioning it is that the people who like have such strong feelings and will like want to fight you over because of what they experienced, because of in a lot of cases, anyone who's ever been in a war zone is going to have a certain perspective that most people can't identify with, and they're going to have an association with like actual sacrifice in a way that few people can understand. And I genuinely like compassionately feel for them having to go through that. Like I know a lot of really good humans who are really messed up because of their war experience, right now. And
every single one.
And yet they're still huge patriots, and a lot of them encourage their children to go get into the military, which to me just like, why would you want that for them?
Cognitive dissonance much? Yeah,
man, dude, yeah. I don't get it. But there is nothing to save. That's the thing, right? This concept that all men were created equal, that's all men the world over. It doesn't need to be confined to some imaginary lines on a map that these rich people drew, and that came on the backs of people who lived there before they landed.
That's why I can't get I don't get all up in arms with people of defending the border. I'm like, this concept of a border is so un-American, especially if we look through the lens of the people that lived here before in America that could not understand.
Well, but then they'll say you don't have
land. You when the land was their grandmother, so you own your grandmother. That was basically how the people that were here before viewed the white man European concept of ownership. This is.
Well, it's interesting.
That's why I say I'm a custodian here. I don't own anything, not even my body. I'm a custodian.
It's interesting to hear government accounts of. I heard one of them say, "Well, without borders, you don't have a country." That's true. And without a country, we don't have a government. How
Sounds
about that?
Good to me.
Yeah. So,
in the long run.
In the long run, man, that's where this is all, I believe, will end up in some decentralized form of existence, which is always the best form, because then you're immediately only beholden to what is immediately affecting you. And while there may be 15-minute cities and AI and all that stuff in some places, there may also be very agrarian, Amish-like people living amazing lives in others. It's just what works best for them, or what they want.
I see little circles where it's natural, where it's much easier to have a direct direct relationship with your community and with our inevitable government. I mean, which is not the right word anyway. What we're looking for. These are very, very big, reaching concepts, and I think our vision for the future. But I know a lot of people feel it too. This sense of more of a tribalism. I reject the notion that it's always conflict that'll lead to tribe versus tribe, tribe mentality being this bad. That's not what I mean, but let's simplify though, because this big old govern everything it's not working.
No.
And government, if we break the word down, it means to rule the mind.
That's right. That's where I was gonna get to, is this goes back to words mattering. Words matter. And if you want to understand the spell that's being cast, you need to understand the roots of those words. And that's why etymology is so incredibly important. You know, we throw these terms around like it's something without really understanding the underlying meaning, enslaving the mind, government, you know, gubermente, and that stemming from the Latin to literally enslave the mind. You know, how interesting is that what's been chosen for us? And whatever this is that we're going through, I do believe is an evolution. I do. I think it's an evolution of consciousness. I believe that we have within us all, you know, as Anastasia said, we have a particle of God in all of us. That may be what makes man so special from all of the other, you know, entities, maybe throughout the entire uni/multiverse. I don't know. It sure seems like humanity is the focus of everything from alleged aliens to off-world demons and angels and, you know, all this other shit. It's always man's always the focus. Well, why are we so special? Maybe because we were created in the likeness of our creator. Maybe that is the, you know, like it again, it's not that difficult. It's pretty simple when you think of it. You know, like God said, okay, I am a supreme creator. I'm going to give you, my creation, a space to create within or co-create with. And, you know, not only will you do it individually, but you'll do it collectively. And that's the part that we all seem to be missing is we all want to point out again at the bad guy and say that's the source of all that ails us. But if we were the king, would we act any different? I'm going to tell you right now, very few of us would act any different than any of the tyrants that we're pointing at and saying, you know, how evil and wrong they are. Because, you know, because we are not perfect. We are fallible. And we do have certain deficiencies that our ego, you know, like can get the better of us if we're not really aware of. But that's why those systems shouldn't, because that's a deficiency. I'm not going to say it's a flaw or it's just human nature. Again, I'm not sure that we can define what human nature is because we don't know what a fully functioning human is. So we can't say what we know. What a less we know what a 20% brain powered human that we know what their nature is, and it's pretty low. It's pretty lower vibratory things. So, you know, if we can get it up there, like say 40 or 50%, wow, we might be able to fly. I don't know, you know. I just know that we can't keep basing things on principles that everything that we think we know, we can just about at this point prove are lies. Most of what our science, you know, it states as fact. When Neil Tyson deGrasse gets up there and makes these absolute claims, most of that shit is based on theories that no one's actually proven. You know, there's no proof that dark matter exists. There's no proof that, you know, like the premise of this whole CERN collider, allegedly, if it's not a time travel device, which is what I think it is, but they allege that they're colliding, you know, hadron collider, and that's all based on the theory of the boson, BOSOM, and you know, again, just like germ theory is all based on goes back to Louis Pasteur's work, which Louis Pasteur himself refuted in his own journals, said that I lied. I lied. So everything that we call, what we think of as viruses and how viruses work, that's all theory. It's not proven. They'll say, oh, well, we can see it under an electron microscope. No, we see these things that we label a virus, but we don't know where they come from. We don't know what triggers their creation. And I don't accept that the creator of all created these things in creation that will completely destroy creation. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That sounds like something man would do to man. And so, again, I may be wrong. I probably am.
Well, it's good to being just being open to it. I mean, you're right. I was thinking about that the other day too. Is I didn't get to finish the thought when we were on phone conversation that time. With things look pretty bad and they look pretty bad, and in a way, like they are. Like, I'll call a spade, but we don't necessarily. It's almost made to seem that the scale is tipped so far that like nobody in the forces of light are out there working for us either, when the fact is we don't know that, and we don't know that a dystopia is where we're going. And I'm not suggesting that that's where you're suggesting where that it has to go there. I know enough about you to know where you stand, Jeremy. And when I'm saying you, I'm speaking to you. But for our viewers who might feel like it is inevitable, we don't know that. We don't know what our history truly was. That's why on our show, like, one of our favorite things, we've had some friends tell us it's disempowering perhaps to say it, and that maybe we need to not be, give the appearance of being so humble by saying it. We do it from a place of humility and also jokingly, and also there is still truth in it though, and that's why we say we don't know shit, or at least we can't prove shit. I can only prove what I've experienced. I have a lot of inclinations and suspicions and convictions, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to allow myself to be okay with the way that I am to an extent, so long as it's not absolutely detrimental, to myself or to others around me. Getting back to, we don't know where we came from. We don't know where we're going specifically. But I think this I do know, that we generate with our minds. I have attracted things, both positive and negative. Positive, consciously, I have attracted things almost to freaky specific detail into my life experience. Seldom in the time scale that I would like to see it manifest. I'm a pretty impatient individual, but my gosh, I go through things that I've written down, and because every once in a while I'll write these big lists from all sorts of things around the house I need to fix, things I need to do with the vehicles, to bigger chunks of stuff, and then big life stuff, and some stuff that hasn't reached completion yet either. But damn, like 90% of those things came about. Most of them, 90% of them, with conscious action involved towards those steps too, but still with this ingredient of mystery of, wow, I didn't really work that hard for that thing. You know what I mean? Like I got this phone call at 2:22 and then this happened, And what I'm getting to is this is if we don't know where we're going, let's think about where we would like to go.
Yes.
Start focusing on the world that we want instead of focusing on the world that is presented to us.
That's right. And that's why I ultimately think, man, that there's going to be this weird split where, like, there's going to be simultaneous. Like, I think that what the globalist image want, they're going to get some of it. They're going to get some of it, but it's not going to stand the test of time, and it's going to fall away as whatever springs out of the other side, which is what I would consider a very quiet, major minority of people who are just like watching this and going, what the fuck is going on here, man? Did people not see the insanity, that's going on? And you're like, can we not just call it what it is? No, we can't call it what it is because, like, then we're going to be a racist, bigot, whatever, misogynist, whatever, phobe of some sort. So we'll just rather not deal with that, and we'll be quiet. But more and more and more, it's getting harder to do that. Like, you have to pick your lane. And what I would say is like the rational lane, and then there's the anti-rational lane, and the anti-rational train is going to like caroon off the tracks, but it's going to take people with it when it goes.
Yeah.
And this one is going wherever this one is going, wherever we consciously take it. But like you said, if we aren't consciously talking about this in a way like, well, where would we like it to go, then like, it's not going. I would love to see a world where how you look, what you believe, what you wear, who you give credence to doesn't matter, because we're okay with you. Like, I'm okay with you not believing how I believe, instead of the the insane people right now who, if you do not accept their worldview, and that is apt to dramatically change tomorrow, by the way. But if you don't accept it today, then not only are you evil, but you must be dealt with, and it's not in a nice way. Then you're like, it's complete contradiction. I don't. How do you even exist in a world like that? Because when has anyone ever agreed on everything? Never, never. But right now we have a lot of really angsty, insane people. They are insane. They've got a mind virus. That's the real virus that's going on. Is this mind virus?
I think so too.
They're running someone else's program, and it's gripped by fear, and maybe because they're controllable, because they're fluoridated, they're eating shit food, they're living in a toxic environment, they're surrounded by toxic people, and it's just, you don't really have there's not a lot of hope for someone like that, and so my personal challenge, and I think that this has been really resonating with me. Whatever happens, my challenge is to handle it in as the best version of myself that I've ever been. Whatever I am today, I'm striving to be better tomorrow. And then not every day is a win. You know that. Like, not every day that's okay. You give yourself some grace. You let yourself.
Glad you said that.
Make mistakes. We have to allow for grace. Like, you got to cut some people some slack sometimes. And I've been recently reminded of that, like, that we gotta step back and allow people to fall down, man. It's okay. And then help them up, and acknowledge that I fall down too, and then I will hope that someone's there to help me up when I do, and maybe dust me off.
Be there for yourself. We're definitely in the conscious community harder on ourselves than the people around us most of the time, or at least in my experience, I'm just fiercely hard on myself. It's this jagged path between, like, because it's that part of me of, like, keeping me in check, of not falling into the woes of hypocrisy and all the things that go with it. But I digress. We could definitely do a whole thing on that. We're about reaching the point, I feel like, of summation here.
Yeah.
And resolving, we open with the idea of tension. And, again, Mercury's in a retrograde. Look up what a retrograde is. When Mercury is in retrograde for yourself. If most people watching this have probably already heard that term and whatever. But when I think of tension, and especially when you said the word attention, it's attention right now. It's like, the word attention, and energy flows where our attention goes. So that's interesting from the wordplay standpoint. But I thought about the image of us being stretched and being stretched and being stretched, and it's like, perhaps it's like a yoga. It's making us more flexible to deal with and adapt to the different flux and changes in rhythm within ourselves and without ourselves, what's going on in our environment, the world at large, and then the small things too. I would like to think that I'm becoming more and more limber in mind and in spirit and body. I could use some help in that department as well. We're being stretched to what feels like our limits. And one thing that I do choose to believe is that God never gives us more than what we can handle.
I believe that too.
Ultimately, if we zoom out far enough, even though in the moments, even that's what Jesus was like, please take this burden from me.
Well, so much of what we're seeing, man, is archetypical. Like, that's more and more as I view things from a macro level, like it's archetypes. That's why history repeats. It's these same archetypes over and over again. It's something that Jordan Peterson did a beautiful job of articulating in his biblical series. And why he's like, he doesn't consider himself a Christian, but he's done more for Christians in the Bible in recent times than the church has done for him. And it's he brought me back to looking at the Bible without contempt. But that contempt came from the little kid in me that was stomping its foot and knew, something was off.
Because you found the devil. And it's hard not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's hard to give people and books and ideas grace.
Right.
But I'm sorry, finish your thought.
No, that's okay. I think that's actually a good place to probably put it up, is to end with grace, and to understand, like we opened this up with. If you don't have a plan for you, if you're not focusing your own attention, somebody else absolutely does. And it is not for your personal betterment. Okay, it is not. That's where what I feel, where all this tension that's being stretched, they're preparing to fill that vacuum that they're going to create very rapidly, because they're going to put us into a state of, well, we'll just say discomfort. And we don't like change, and we don't like discomfort collectively. So I would just say, whatever happens in your own specific area, make sure that you're consciously deciding how to fill that space, however that looks, however ugly it may appear in the physical. How can we do it in such a way that is coming from a loving place where we're offering grace, and we're trying to be supremely compassionate, and that's coming from somebody who has anger as a default. Like that's my default emotion to everything is anger. So
yeah, I was thinking earlier, wrapping it up. We are wrapped up, but ending with I was thinking last night of asking our viewers, please, in the comments, like, offer, if not necessarily solutions, not looking for solutions for all these complex problems, please put in the comments, put in your 8 things, your vision for a better world, like simplified. It doesn't have to be necessarily things that we see, and it can be quote unquote selfish pursuits or interests too. If they're job specific, like, write that shit down, write it on our comment wall. I'm going to read it. It's going to make me feel good. I want to know your vision. I want to know everyone's vision and work with it, because I want what other people truly want, what they truly want.
Right.
What their heart wants, what their soul smiles for wanting. I want to know that.
What brings you joy?
It makes me happy, makes me hopeful, and I'll envision it too. We'll meet each other. We'll catch each other's feelings and meet each other on the heart plane, So please, in the comments, please tell me. It would be great if it's 8 things. 8 feels like a good number. We're in the month of August. It hit me like a ton of bricks when you said that the poll was 8 things that people had. I was encouraged to write down 8 things during what the Lionsgate portal was, 8-8. We're in the year 2024. 2 times 4 is 8 as well. So 8 seems like a good number. But even if it's just 3 things, then the number is kind of arbitrary. But anyway, please write it down for yourself. If you have a care to, put it in the comment section. We'd love to read it. We need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, we're going to call this one and sign off. And I want to again thank the people who have watched us. We're over 4,800 views since the little over a month that we started this thing, and we're approaching 100 subscribers. That's famous. All it's all good. I'm doing this because I love these conversations.
Yeah, we're gonna keep doing this shit.
Damn right.
We're gonna blow up. Watch it.
I agree. I feel that way. Well, all right. Thank y'all. And you all have a fantastic week. We'll catch you on the next time.